GettingPositiveKarmaNow.com presents Bhagavad Gita for All, lectures by Nalan K. Narula, recorded in front of a live audience.
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityanand Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Om Jnanam Timirandasya Jnananjana Shlakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. So last time we had completed text 4 of the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Yoga of the Supreme Person, Purushottama Yoga, realization of the ultimate truth, the absolute truth, and we were talking about the tree of life in the material world, the Ashwath tree, that is imperishable, eternal, for those who are averse to the highest principle, the Supreme Lord, and yet it is transient and temporary for those who are devoted to the Lord. The roots are rising upwards and branches are going downwards. The leaves that nourish this tree are the Vedic hymns, and one who knows the truth of the nature of this tree is called a knower of the Vedas. So this tree is extending from Brahmalok right down to Patalok. So it is very difficult to understand this tree unless one takes the shelter of the Vedas. So that was 15.1, and then 15.2 was that the branches of the tree are representing the jivas, the shoots are representing the objects of the senses, and the upward rising shoots are going to the higher planes of existence, to Brahmalok and downward, from Brahmalok to the spiritual planets, while the downward branches are extending to the plane of the human, animal and lower species of existence. And that is the descent starts from Brahmalok. So Brahmalok is the, you can say, at the edge of the spiritual world. So the tree is going all the way down from Brahmalok to our planet, the Bhulok, which is halfway of the 14 planetary systems. And one is bound by karmic actions and reactions. So this we had covered the week before last, and last week we had covered 3 and 4, text 3 and 4 of 15th chapter, that the true form of this upside down inverted tree, banyan tree, Ashwath tree, cannot be seen in the material world without Vedic knowledge. Its origins, its foundation and end cannot be perceived or understood by anyone unless they have this Vedic knowledge. Thereafter, getting the sharp axe of detachment through the association of saintly devotees, one must firmly cut down this illusory tree of material association that is rooted in the aversion to the Supreme Lord. So, wanting to be away from the Supreme Lord, the living entity descends to these lower planes of existence. And how do you cut this down? In association with the proper Sangha of the devotees. Who are the devotees? They are the devotees or devoted to the Supreme Lord Krishna. And those who are not devoted, they are coming down. So one must search out that place where, having once gone, one never returns to the material plane of existence, and that place is the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. So the Adyam Purusham, the original personality of Godhead, prapadyate, to surrender to take shelter under. So how do you take shelter? You take shelter, padam tat, those lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. And from there one must certainly surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, from whom this unending illusory tree of the material world has appeared. So the material manifestation is taking place through the immediate expansion of Krishna as Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and we must pray or surrender to this original person so that we can understand and find our way out from this eternal tree of miserable human condition, of miserable karmic life that one is undergoing in the material zone of existence. So today we have text 15.5 of chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita. Nirmana moha jit sanga dosha adhyatma nitya vinvritta kama dvandver vimukta sukha dukha sangir gachanti amudha padam avyayam tat. So nirmana moha jita sanga dosha. So nir means without, man means false prestige. Moha means delusion and false belief. Jit means having conquered. Sang is the association or attachment. Dosha is the faults. Adhyatma is spiritual knowledge of the self, self-realization. Nitya vinivritta. Nitya means dedicated, engrossed in the eternal, always engrossed in the eternal. And vinivritta means to separate from, to disassociate from. Kama, from lust. Dvandve vimukta sukha dukha sangyai. Kama is lust, dvandve from the dualities of sukh and dukh, happiness and distress, sangye as it is called, vimukta, liberated from. So one who is liberated from these dualities, known as sukh and dukh, happiness and distress, such a one, gachanti, such a one goes or attains to a mudha. A mudha means bewildered, confused, foolish. So one who is neither bewildered nor confused nor foolish, in other words, one who is in knowledge, then he goes to the padam, to the position or the shelter of avyayam tat, the eternal shelter. So if we were to state what Lord Krishna is saying in fact and essence, he is saying that free from false prestige and the delusion, moha, of being a creator, free of faulty and unholy association, dedicated to spiritual knowledge and realization of the spiritual and realization of the eternal self, free from the lust for the temporary material, and liberated from the duality known as happiness and distress. Those undiluted and surrendered souls reach that position which is the eternal shelter of all. Now, nirman means, as I said here, it means without false prestige, without pride. Moha means delusion and false belief. But if we examine this first few words, it gives you a lot more information if you examine them in these different ways. If we look at the sequence of words that says Nirvana Moha Jita Sangha, so this means having conquered the delusional attachment for fruitive creative activities, because Nirman means to create also, and Moha means to be attached. So one who is attached to fruitive activities, That is one. And one who is Jita Sangha, one who has conquered that attachment. And then if we look at Jita Sangha dosha, so having conquered or becoming free of the defective, faulty, unholy association. So what are the defective associations? The association of the false ego, as well as asatsang. So if you look at this, you can meditate on these first 5 words, and it gives you so much information depending on how you understand the various implications of this information. So it gives you also the meaning that, very importantly, that the false ego understanding of one being a creator or a let's say controller comes from being attached to the fruitive activity for results, and that is the business of the false ego. So one has to be free of this, one has to conquer the delusional attachment. So throughout Bhagavad Gita, at various key points, we have been hearing Krishna saying that one should not be attached to too much working, too much endeavor for fruitive results, and be satisfied with gains that come of their own accord, because there is a history, there is a whole background coming from the past of what you are receiving now. For example, you are born in a particular family, in a particular body, in a particular status, and that is coming, not you didn't do anything for it now. You did something for it previously, and those things are working. You get a particular type of intellect or intelligence, that is also coming from past activity. So the key point here is that one should not think of oneself as a controller, because that is absolutely contrary to the objectives that we are having here of understanding the absolute truth and of finding that place which is a shelter for us, which is an eternal shelter. So those who are overly attached to the material obviously cannot approach the spiritual world, which is why it is very important to have your spiritual connection and maintain it in good standing, and to do those things that promote you to the direction of approaching and understanding what the spiritual really is and who the ultimate reality and truth is. So people who are not working with the energies of removing illusion, such as the Brahminical energies, the universal life force energy of Reiki and the K-cube force, they are not able to approach the spiritual. It's very difficult job for them. So then we have text 15.6. Lord Krishna is continuing to tell Arjun, Na tad bhasyate suryo, na shashanko na pavaka, yad gatva na nivartante, tad dham parmam mama. So, na tat bhasyate, that does not illuminate. What does not illuminate? Surya, the sun. Neither the sun, nor the moon, nor fire, nor electricity illuminate my supreme abode, Golok, Vrindavan, and the Vaikuntha planets. One who reaches my all illuminating abode never comes back to the material world. Nivartante tat dham parmam mama. Yat gatva na nivartante tat dham parmam mama. So one who actually reaches that place never has to come back to the material world. The total illumination in the universe is coming from Krishna himself directly. That is the soul power of Krishna. He is the supreme soul. There is no difference between his body and his soul. It is entirely one. And one who reaches his special place, special planet, Paramam, Dham, the place, the planet, the land, which is the supreme, and it is his personal supreme land. So, why is this distinction of his highest personal supreme land? Is because everything is coming from Krishna, even the material universe. So he owns everything, or he is the source of everything, but this world is not supreme. This is relative, temporary. It is a place of repeated birth, death, old age, disease. It is a place where the living entity is traveling from one species to another, lifetime after lifetime. So the highest place is the spiritual, where you do not undergo those kind of transformations. You are not bound to die and take birth again, and so on and so forth. So old age, disease, birth, death does not exist in the Vaikuntha planets and in Golok Vrindavan, which is his personal central place of living. That's where he is always. Then we have text 15.7. Mama eva amsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana mana sasthani indriyani prakriti sthani karshati. Mama eva ansha, my certainly fragmental separated particles, jiva loke, jiva bhuta. The jiva conditioned living entity is living in jiva loke, the world of conditional life. Sanatana mana sasthani indriyani prakriti sthani karshati. So the individual spirit soul are certainly the separated particles and potencies of mind. Krishna says, these entities are eternal, but under the influence of material nature, they are situated in a conditioned form of life, adopting and struggling with the five senses and the mind, which is the sixth sense. Now, karshati. Last word is karshati. Prakriti sthani karshati. Situated in the material nature and karshati. So karshati has the meaning, three meanings that we can look at. Karshati means to be attracted to, or that which attracts, and which adopts. So it is not natural, it is unnatural. And another meaning of karshati is the one who is struggling. So here we have a lot of information again, that the living entity is qualitatively one with Lord Krishna, but quantitatively very small. Lord Krishna says it's a small, fragmented, separated particle of mind. It is not having the same potency as me in full. It is having the qualities that I have, but in very small quantity. And its eternal nature is obscured by karmic entanglements that give entangling results in material life. So when the fragmental particle is liberated from material influence and bodily entanglement, it regains its spiritual nature. So this has been explained in many ways, that when a spark falls away from a fire, it becomes cold ash on the ashen heap, which can be likened to the material zone of existence. And when the spark is again put in touch, that ashen spark is put in touch with the fire, it starts to glow again. So if you have ever tried that, you can try it. It is actually working like that. And it is a very nice analogy that the fragmented particle can regain its original nature. But how? By giving up the material attachments which it has adopted through the senses. So if you recall that the material nature consists of the separated inferior energy of Krishna, which is the Pancha Mahabhuta, And then the separated superior energy of Krishna, which is the Maya energy, which creates the three material modes of nature, the three qualities, Satogun, Rajogun and Tamogun. So under these influences with the senses, where each of these gunas are fighting for supremacy from time to time, the living entity is in a delusional state, basically insane. That is what it means. It's a form of insanity, of thinking the temporary is the permanent, whereas the permanent you are ignoring. So this is an interesting understanding here. Then we have 15.8. Shariram yad avapnoti yad chapi utkramati ishvara. Utkramati ishvara. Grit vaitani samyati vayur gandhan ivashayat. So, shariram yad avapnoti, the body, the type of body, avapnoti, the entity gets, yat as cha api utkramati, and it also leaves or gives up. Ishvara. Ishvara here is the Lord of the body, which is the soul, the individual soul. Gritva, taking up. Etani, all these. Samyati, goes away. Vayu gandhan iva asayat, just as the air takes away the fragrance of a flower from their source. So what this means is, to simplify this and to understand the meaning in proper context, in any bodily form that it enters and from which it departs to enter another, the soul, as the master of that body, carries with it these 6 subtle senses and the impressions that they have created, just as the wind carries the fragrance of a flower to a distant place from its source. So the mind, senses, false ego develop impressions living in a particular body, and these are carried over to the next body. And you can refer to 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which is about nature, enjoyer and consciousness. And there Bhaktivedanta Swami's commentary is that the 5 great elements, false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested are the 3 material modes of nature in a dormant form called the pradhan, and then the 10 senses and the mind, the 5 sense objects, desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate of these, the life symptoms and convictions. All of these are considered in summary to be the field of activities and its interactions. So, the person, the soul, carries its convictions, carries its beliefs, carries what it thinks it is delusionally to the next body, from one body to another body. So this is the way that it travels through the universe. In any bodily form that it enters and from which it departs to enter another, the soul, as the master of the body, carries with it these 6 subtle senses and the impressions they have created, just as the air carries the fragrance of a flower from its source to another place, to a distant place. So this is how the soul is moving, transmigrating from one body to another, carrying the past impressions. So if you go back a couple of shlokas, you'll find that there were the higher roots and the lower roots. So the higher roots we are talking about in the Ashwath tree are these past impressions. You think you are this, that and the other, whatever your consciousness is, it takes on the color of your convictions, of your impressions. So that is 15.8. And 15.9, Shrotram chakshu sparshanam cha rasanam grihanam evacha adhisthaya manacha avam manacha manacha ayam vishayan upasevati. So Shrotram chakshu sparshanam cha. Shrotram is the ears, chakshus is the eyes, sparsh is the sense of touch through the medium of the skin. The skin is where you perceive touch. Cha rasanam, taste coming from the tongue. Grihanam, the smelling power that is working through your nose. Evacha, also, and adhisthaya, presiding over mana, the mind. Cha ayam vishayan upasevate. So, cha, also the living entity, ayam is the living entity, vishayan are the sense objects, upasevate, enjoys. It is enjoying those. So, having entered a material body, the living entity presides over the ears, eyes, skin, tongue, nose, and the mind, and enjoys the sense objects related to these organs, which are sound, form, touch, taste, and smell. So, according to the bodily form that the soul occupies, it gets, according to its karma, the living entity enjoys the senses. So, that is 15.9, and we will pause here. So, I will go over the shlokas again, that what we have studied today, the translation. So 15, starting from 15.5. Free from false prestige and the delusion of being a creator-controller, free of faulty and unholy association, dedicated to spiritual knowledge and realization of the eternal self, free from the lust for the temporary material, and liberated from the duality known as happiness and distress, those undeluded and surrendered souls reach that position which is the eternal shelter. 15.6. Neither the sun, nor the moon, nor fire, nor electricity illuminate my supreme abode, Golok Vrindavan, and the Vaikuntha planets. One who reaches my all-illuminating abode never comes back to the material world. The individual, then we have 15.7, the individual spirit souls are certainly the separated particles and potencies of mind. These entities are eternal, but under the influence of material nature, they are situated in a conditioned form of life, adopting and struggling with the five senses and the mind, which is the sixth sense. Then 15.8, in any bodily form that it enters, the soul enters, and from which it departs to enter another, the soul, as the master of that body, carries with it all of these six subtle senses and the impressions and convictions that they have created, just as the air carries the fragrance of a flower from its source to another place. And then 15.9, having entered a material body, the living entity presides over the ears, eyes, skin, tongue, nose, and the mind, and enjoys the sense objects of sound, form, touch, taste, and smell. So this is how the living entity is functioning, how he is under a delusional state, and Lord Krishna has also indicated what is the way out, which is the surrender to the divine, taking shelter. Surrender means to take shelter and step away from the asatsang, from the dosha, the dushit connections that we have with the false ego, with the understanding or the acting as though we are creator controllers and being overly attached to material endeavor. Trying to work for fruitive results, thinking we are the creators. So this is what Krishna is telling Arjuna in this sequence. So we will pause here at 15:09, and if there are any questions, I will take some questions now.
So there's a question from Shipra.
Yes.
Sir, when I'm writing affirmations, mostly it is motivated by a desire to be happy or free of some pain and distress,
Yes.
be it for myself or someone else.
Yes.
How do I move beyond the delusion of happiness and distress in healing work and day-to-day life?
We had mentioned last time that there are the temporary desirable objectives of life and the permanent desirable objectives of life. And Krishna is talking about these here. So when you are in the mode of trying to sort out your life to make it more comfortable, in other words, free of pain, free of distress of various types, you are using the spiritual energy to do that, and in the process you are also negating your binding consequence karma and improving your intelligence to the level where you start getting detached from the results of whatever you are asking for. So you may ask, you may send healing for anything, it is all right. Gradually in time you get detached from those. Not detached in the sense of rejecting anything. Krishna said many times that you should neither embrace nor reject any of these drives that are coming from the material modes of nature, whether it is ignorance or whether it is passion or whether it is a mode of goodness. But you must know which is the path eventually. So you may be currently going through these processes. Gradually you will become more detached. But you cannot become artificially detached. Because if you reject something artificially, tomorrow it will come back and bite you and haunt you. Then you will want to do those things, and then the time for that has passed, and then you cannot actually enjoy. So you will then undergo some depression, unhappiness, and so on. So the whole process of healing with the Reiki energies is the method of where you use a thorn to take out another thorn. It is like we taught you in the Divine Reiki Light method, that people you do not want to send healing to, but they are actually very responsible for giving you your karmic repercussions. There are other ways to send them healing, which may appeal to your egoistic nature more. So then you happily do those things. But if you do not send healing to them thinking, oh, why should I send them this healing because it will improve their life, they've been so bad, then you will never be completely free of that association. So when you start sending healing in the Divine Reiki Light, for example, you become very detached. And we have always issued a challenge. How long can you stay upset or angry in the Divine Reiki Light? It is practically impossible to cross more than a second or two. Even in the normal course, if you are getting very agitated by thoughts of a person or what they did to you, when you are connecting your consciousness to the light, that disappears. So you become very detached. So the bottom line solution is be more connected in your consciousness and awareness to the flow of the healing energy, to the light, to Reiki, to the universal life force. So the more you are connected to that Brahminical energy, the more you will be detached and free. So there are certain duties and obligations that you need to fulfill in your material life, which you do with the help of the healing energies. So that's how you synthesize everything that you know about healing, and it is in line with what you have learned today in the Bhagavad Gita. Yes.
So, was it that it was very important for us to go through all those lifetimes, like as amoeba or the lower life forms?
You don't come from the lower life forms. You come from the higher life forms. You descend. You descend from the higher planes down to the lower planes. The lower planes appear first because that is the upside down reflection. So you don't have to go to an amoeba or a virus or a bacteria form or a cat or a dog. But there is no guarantee that you won't go there. It depends entirely on how you act. So first you came at very high levels, you descended from a high level to perhaps the Brahmalok and the lower loks, and may not be the Brahmaloks, but some place where you actually wanted to enjoy your senses. So you came to a zone where you wanted to enjoy your senses, which is this zone. So you are enjoying your senses here and also in the higher planets. So from the higher planets, even the demigods can come down here. So they can descend. So it is it is lost in history where you came from which specific zone did you transit through. That's not easy to find out. But the Bhagavatam tells us that there is the edge of the spiritual that you appear in, and from there, in a dizzy state of consciousness, you are attracted towards material nature. You want to explore it, you want to enjoy it, separate away from Krishna, from the divine. So that is the key point which we have explained here also. The whole thing is rooted in turning your face away from the divine. It is literally, in fact, turning away from the divine. So when you are looking at the divine, it's very brilliant, very bright. You turn away, oh, this is very nice, let me see. You go there. And you're instantly there. That's how you come to the material world. So in the context of the spiritual, a lifetime is just not even an eye blink. So we are, to us, because we are conditioned by material nature, everything appears to be interminable. But going back, Garbhodaksha Vishnu, one exhalation is the whole material creation and one inhalation is the winding up. So you have 16 to 20 breaths in a minute. So can you imagine that if a being is breathing like that and we are thinking is billions of years. So time is relative. So from that angle, we are here for a very short time, but from our perspective, we are here eternally. So you can get freedom from that going through this process. Yes.
So what you say, genetics is the soul pattern that's brought it down? Like the person is supposed to...
The soul is misidentified. The soul has misidentified with the ego. And the expansion of that. These are the body, the senses. I am man, I am woman, I am this type of person, or I am this type of a being, and this is what I have to do, this is my interest in life. So this is something that has been prepared in previous lifetime. So what you have to do is, coming from your previous desires, plus your bank balance of karma, which is the position that you get, and that includes whatever placement you are supposed to be in life to learn the lessons best in order to progress towards the spiritual.
Eventually this should progress spiritually.
That is there, but if you are not going to progress, then you descend into lower and lower species of life. So there are 8,400,000 species of life, of which only 400,000 are humanoid forms. And those humanoid forms are not just calculated, the anthropology of these 400,000 beings. It depends on the spiritual evolution of those beings, not just bodily form. So it is calculated, it can be in any bodily form, but if the spiritual evolution that counts, or the self-realization aspect of it that counts. So one who is moving towards the spiritual realization of the personal eternal self and the Paramatma, the super soul, expansion of Krishna, of Garbhodaksha Vishnu, coming into the each being. That is what defines the 400,000 species. So there are not that many. 400,000 categories of human form are not that many. So you have all kinds, from the lowest, from the most dull to the most elevated in terms of consciousness and intelligence and ability to understand the spiritual. And in between you have the material scientists who are focused on matter only. So they can travel, their consciousness can evolve while even in this body. So it is not that you have to take a new body. Let's say you are starting off in this lifetime in a body where you do not really understand or don't even care. The person next to you is evolving. You may be even born in the same family, the same clan or whatever it is, and one person will go in this direction and the other will not. So they are different species according to Vedic anthropology.
Even in one family unit.
Yes, they're different.
Can,
yes, they can be demons. Like Prahlad Maharaj was born in demonic family. So Lord Indra was a demon, the head of the Maruts. Then he transformed to demigod. So you can transfer. The species are transferable. The designation of species is transferable depending on your spiritual understanding.
Is it with just one thought, sir, you can turn? Or is
By your consciousness turning.
the
Consciousness. So the more you bathe your consciousness and connect with the healing energy, with the Brahma energy, the more you become aware. And the more detached you become automatically.
And with satsang, like you said.
And satsang is very important. And giving up a satsang is very important. So not associating with the faulty, the defective, dosha. And not associating with your false ego. So when your false ego is very silent, then only you can experience the manifestation of the self-realization. So that will happen, and that happens from time to time.
And how do we make it silent, sir?
By focusing on the healing energy.
So you said that the Reiki energy is the illusion removing energy.
It is, yes. The Brahma energies are all removing illusion. Because they are spiritual life force. So it's like we gave the example of this process where we use the divine Reiki light, we meditate and go into it. That light removes your illusion because then there is no agitation. So there is relative peace and calm once you are stabilizing in that position. During the process of stabilization, you may find your heart chakra expanding, and so then your emotions are coming up or some cleansing is taking place. But when you are in that consciousness on a regular basis, there is no disturbance. So there is only awareness of the eternal self. So when you are in that, it is very refreshing and relieving. And you can be in that as often as you like. There is no limit. And those impressions and those convictions you will carry into your next body. So if you happen to transit to the spiritual world, then all that will go. And you will unfold there your personality, whatever it is, according to the bodily form that Krishna thinks is appropriate for you, you will get. And you will associate in some way in the Vaikuntha planets or in Golok Vrindavan. So from there you don't have to come back at all. It's not required.
What do you do then?
You enjoy, you associate in the service of Krishna.
There is work.
Oh yes, of course. It is like you are doing everything in relationship to Krishna in working. It's the inverted tree of life. So just like you have family here, you have community, it is family and community there also. But it does not have any of the defects of material nature. So Krishna has parents, although he is self-born, he has no parents. He is the original parent of everyone. But the society is made up there like that. So those descriptions you will find in the Bhagavatam. Okay, it's all about Krishna's pastimes there. Okay? Yes.
This question from Sam Gautam.
Yes.
Respected Master, it seems the purpose of creation of universe is an opportunity for every soul to purify themselves and be with Krishna. As such, souls remain even after every cycle of creation and destruction with Krishna. Is that correct understanding?
Yes, now that opens up a whole different discussion. Because the question comes then that at the end of the creation cycle, the souls go back into the body of Krishna. Everything goes back. So, how do we distinguish the liberated souls from the bound souls? So, at the end of the cycle of creation, the whole universe, all the souls go back. Then they come out again. So, the distinguishing factor is that those who are attached to the material, who are the sansaris, so to speak, they, because of their karmic impressions, they are born in the material world, whereas the spiritual remain in the spiritual. So this is how the entities go and come. So at the end of the cycle, even the lowest entities, they merge back, and the soul self, everything dissolves. So it is said that it is like many bees are taking pollen and making honey. So the individual pollen loses its individuality by merging in the honey. But actually it is then coming out again as the individual. The individuality is not permanently lost. It is apparently lost. Just like, again, an example could be that a green parrot goes into a green tree. You think he has merged into the tree, but he is not, because he's going to fly out again tomorrow or some moments later. So it is not a permanent position. Whereas in the spiritual, it is a permanent position. So the material is taken in and then it comes out again. So most of the spiritual sky is just the spiritual world, is a small part which is the material existence. Okay? Alright, then we will conclude here. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So, having completed text 9 of chapter 15, we will take up the subsequent text next time. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.
You've been listening to Nalan Kainarula on GettingPositiveKarmaNow.com.